The word icon, I feel, is an often overused term, especially when it comes to cars. Now, I'm not suggesting there aren't good cars out there, but people tend to use that word, they bandy it about like it's just available to everything. The Renault Sport Clio, good car, icon? Not really. The Mercedes SL, again, a very, very good car, but iconic? No. You see, to me, an icon has to be something, it has to be a car that's either had a massive impact in the way that a manufacturer evolves, or it has to have an impact to the cultural generation of when that car was for sale. The original Mini, for instance, take that. That is, without doubt, an iconic car. A car that was originally designed to be four-seat family transport, yet through the 1960s moved that cultural generation of London, that swinging 60s vibe where everyone from rock stars to movie stars were driving them. And of course it remained in production for decades after. The Porsche 911, a great example of how a car formed the backbone of a company and showed the way that evolution may be the answer rather than revolution, because it is still probably, in my opinion, the best sports car that you can buy. The Aston Martin DB5, not a particularly great car to drive, believe it or not, but 11 minutes on the silver screen with one of the world's biggest movie stars, and you now have what is often referred to as the most famous car in the world. And then, of course, there's the Land Rover, the original Land Rover, a car so iconic that it spawned the company that built it. But there is another car that is often overlooked that I feel deserves the title of icon, a car that without which we wouldn't have our beloved Land Rover. And it's this, the Willys Jeep. Now, a little bit of a history lesson behind the Willys Jeep. It's back when World War II was in the throes, and America decided to roll its sleeves up and get involved with keeping Mr. Hitler away from his rampaging efforts of reaching England. And what they decided was that the only way to stop him was from a land invasion. And the way they were going to do this was by utilising a vehicle, or using a vehicle that could be light enough to be stowed in landing craft or in the belly of a transport plane, yet rugged enough that it could carry troops and equipment into the battlefield. Now, they came up with this brief and they asked many companies across America to design and build a vehicle that would suit this purpose in just 2 weeks, believe it or not. And it was a company called Bantam who came forth and designed this. The only problem was, whilst they designed it, they couldn't build it. So Uncle Sam thanked them for their services to the country and went to the Ford Motor Company and Willys Overland and said, can you do this? Ford got involved with the development, but it was Willys Overland that then came up with the goods, and this is what they produced. The GP, the general purpose, or as we now know as the Jeep. Over 600,000 of these plucky little things were built for their war efforts. In fact, so important were they that General George Marshall said it was America's greatest contribution to the war effort and modern warfare itself. But after the war finished, many were returned to civilian hands, and one found its way across the Atlantic and into the hands of the designer of Rover Car Company, a man who was tasked with coming up with a new type of vehicle that would aid Britain's farmers in their daily struggles with their ageing tractor fleet. And the template for the Jeep was used for the Land Rover. So we do have quite a lot to thank this little car for. Now, those icons that we were talking about earlier, they're all still around in some way, shape or form. But they've progressed, they've moved on from their original design brief. The Mini isn't, well, Mini anymore. The Porsche 911 is as big and bloated as the stockbrokers who buy it. The DB5 has now progressed so far, it's DB12. And the Land Rover, well, is now the Defender, and all it shares with the original thing is the badge. However, believe it or not, this is the one that has stayed true to form. Because as you can see, you can still buy a Jeep today that takes the same basis as its great-grandfather, and it is this, the Jeep Wrangler, a car that I do think deserves the term icon. And in this video, I plan to show you why. Okay, look, I'm not suggesting that this is the same as this in a lot of ways. I mean, let's be honest, on a day like today, which one would you rather be driving? But believe it or not, if you think about it, the way that the modern day Wrangler is all thanks to this. And the way it's been designed is still thanks to this. Now, obviously, the Wrangler has been around for a long, long time now through various different versions. And this is the latest 2023 model. Next year, 2024, it's still so important to Jeep that it's going electric with a hybrid model. But look at the design of it, you can still see that it is a proper Jeep. And as I say, they've retained all of the styling cues that makes this so instantly recognisable. Your 7-slot grille, your outbound circular headlamps, your outbound wings so you can see the extremities. See what I mean? Your big protruding front bumper. And that's before we talk about the fact that you can have it all open air as well. Now, of course, this one is the unlimited model. It's the 5-door model, but you can still have it with 2 doors. And even this one, you can remove pretty much all the bodywork. The roof comes off, the doors come off. Hell, you can even fold the windscreen forward just like you can on the original. But does it fit in modern day society? We know that we still love our big SUVs, especially here in the UK, but I'm not going to sit here and say that this is going to be as comfortable as a big Range Rover or even a big Jeep Grand Cherokee. But can it still cut it in the cut and thrust of everyday motoring? And does it deserve to live up to the billing of Icon? Well, over the next week with my family, that is what I'm going to try and show. So please do join us. Now, if this is the first video from the new House of Cars channel, and if you think you might enjoy what we're going to be doing, then of course now might be a nice time to ask you to subscribe. And after you've watched the video, if you have enjoyed it, press the like button. And of course, if you press the bell button, then you'll get notified of when our next video is up and loaded. So stick around and enjoy it. So here we are in Scotland with the new Jeep Wrangler. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how it drove on the way up here a little bit later when we're driving the car, but I just wanted to just kind of go over a little bit of the design of the car, which I think is quite important because whilst Land Rover had such a difficult task redesigning the Defender for the modern age, Jeep tend to have, well, they've been quite clever about it really, because you can really trace the roots back, way back to that original Willys Jeep. As I said earlier, of course, you've got your iconic kind of 7-slot grille, which Jeep's synonymous with. The outbound sort of like round headlights. Now, during the 1980s, the Wrangler got square headlights, but they did go back to the circular ones, which I'm really pleased about because I say it really sort of like shows the heritage of the original Willys Jeep. You've got this great big jutting bumper, when obviously legislation has to play a huge part in the design of any car, but of course for safety reasons that's why you've got this massive big front bumper that sticks out like a spoilt child's bottom lip. But even so, it sort of suits the kind of rugged nature of the car, I think. And of course, you've got kind of Jeep's signature wings at the front here. You know, the fact that sort of like the wheels stick out from the bodywork. In other words, you know, they're covered by these sort of like front wings, which gives it great ability to place the car on the road, especially when you're on the kind of smaller, tighter roads like we've got up here. Huge, big, chunky wheels and tyres, as you'd expect for any proper off-roader. Massive load of ground clearance. And of course, it's this kind of trapezoidal shape that you get, which means that it allows sort of like, you know, a huge amount of wheel articulation, which plays well into the Jeep's off-road ability. Bonnet unlatches with these big kind of chunky things here. No internal bonnet release, that's it. That's what you've got, your big kind of latches there. And as I said, remember, this windscreen are much more kind of steeply raked. You can fold that forward now. You can take all the roof and the doors off the car and fold it forward. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do that when the weather's like this up in Scotland, but you can get the idea behind it, can't you? Now this is the unlimited model, which means that it has the 4 doors. Of course you can still buy a Wrangler with 2 doors, but again, in fairness, it's probably not something that I would advise doing unless you're a serious hardcore off-roader, because the 2-door car, the shorter wheelbase car, is much better off-road than the big longer 4-door one. But in terms of everyday use and sort of like, you know, ability on road, it's the 4-door one I would certainly suggest. But I really like the look of this car. I say, to me, it still turns heads. And it's funny, you know, being up here, and of course, because there aren't so many of them around, you do get a lot of love for this car. People are really interested in it. They keep coming up to me and going, wow. You know, in some respects they say, I didn't even realise they still made the car. And that's the other thing. It's such a shame that we don't realise things like that, because this is a really good car. Now the spec I've got here is the Overland, which is a much more kind of road biased version. There's 3 trim levels you can have. You can have Sahara, which is the base lead-in model, Overland, or Rubicon. And Rubicon is the much more sort of like aggressive off-road style of car, you know, sort of with the big chunkier wheels and tyres on it. The Overland is probably the one that I would pick personally, because it just gives you that creature comforts, but still without losing too much of the ability of the Rubicon. I think the Sahara just feels a little bit too basic inside, especially when it comes to the price of the car, which is not insignificant in fairness. Loads of little details around it. You know, you've got the little kind of Jeep, Willys Jeep symbol on on all the alloy wheels. There's one up in the windscreen here as well. It's just a great fun car. As you can obviously come around the back, you get your external wheel carrier. You've still got a little camera tucked up in there. So as we'll see, technology is not, you know, it's not sort of like forgotten about on the Wrangler. High level brake light. Now this is the only downside with it. You've got to make sure there's enough space behind you, because the only way to open up the back is by getting that side tailgate open like that and then lifting the glass hatch. Now that's 560 odd litres of boot space you've got in there. And if you do fold the 60-40 split down, seats down, that'll take it up to well over 2,000 litres. So there's certainly enough space for most people's needs and wants in there. It's a nice low loading lip as well, so you haven't got this massive great big lift to lift over. The only downside is when they open this up, there's no gutter on here, so rainwater does drip into the edge of the boot here. But the nice thing is, underneath the boot floor, they've put little holes for all the bolts for when you take all the bodywork off. That's thoughtful. Now, as I say, unlimited 4-door. There's enough space in there for most people. In fairness, I had 5 people in the car the other day. I took my son out as well as my mum, and of course the 3 of us. So there was 5 of us in the car, and it's plenty space enough, in fairness. The only downside is this door doesn't open hugely wide. It's all right, and it's quite a kind of narrow opening. So in terms of modern off-roaders, it's maybe not quite as practical in terms of that, but in terms of actual space, there's plenty enough. I don't know, you can see there, you've got not a flat floor, but there's not much of a transmission tunnel in there to get your feet round. So yeah, for the family, it's all right. Ugh. See what I mean? Nice and easy to jump up into. Typical, isn't it? We came up here 2 days, I'm filming this on Tuesday, we came up on Saturday, and the weather on Sunday, Monday has been glorious, absolutely glorious. But I've been doing stuff for the family, and I thought this morning I'll just nip out and do this film. And look at it. Anyway, this afternoon we're off to the Lake District with the car as well, so the car's going to get put through a good test. Let me start the car up. I'll talk about the engine when I'm driving it, but basically it's a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that you get in Wrangler now, here in the UK. And there's good points and bad points about that, but see, I'll talk about it a bit later. Look, this isn't, I want you to think, this House of Cars isn't going to be a review channel as such, not like I do with Auto EV, but I do want to talk a little bit about sort of like the cars and the design and their interiors and such like, so I'll quickly go through it. This is the new Wrangler, and I like this interior. I'll tell you what is really surprising is, I'm not going to call it refined, but how actually easy it is to live with, especially doing the long trip that we've done in the car. You get a 7-inch touchscreen, centrally mounted display here. It's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and it does the job. You know, I mean, it's all touchscreen, as I say, it does everything you need to do. You've got sort of like, you know, you have your heated seat can be controlled through here as well, although there is physical buttons for it here too. And then there's various different apps that you can have through it as well. So it's all right, it's quite good. I mean, it's a bit clunky at times. There's a couple of times that it hasn't booted up as quick as I'd like it to have done, but you know, let's not cause them be too fussy about these things. Right, so you've got this flat dashboard that you're faced with. Just like the you know, the old Wranglers, or CJs as they were originally known as, and they've kept a lot of sort of like the kind of utilitarian feel, but they've managed to, a bit like the outside, they've managed to update it well, I think, in terms of, you know, being able to use it. You get these nice kind of physical climate control buttons down below. And as I say, this particular car, this is an Overland spec. There's 3 trim levels available: the base, the lead-in Sahara, the Overland, and then the Rubicon, which is the kind of proper off-road kind of one. The Overland is probably the one I would want. If it was me, I'd have Overland, because I just like the trim and the spec of it inside. You get leather seats. They're not power seats. You know, you physically got to move them with handles, but I can put up with that. But you do get heated seats, heated steering wheel, and as I say, things like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. I mean, you know, on a Jeep, on a Wrangler, brilliant. The driving position's really good as well. You sit really upright in a really comfortable seat. I did 6 hours in this the other day driving, and it was I got out feeling as fresh as a daisy at the other end in terms of the seat. You know, there's no there's no uncomfortableness in the seat of the car itself. You're faced with a driver display in front of you, which is very simple: rev counter on left, speedo on the right, but you also get this little digital display in the centre here, which will give you a trip meter. It will give you a speed readout if you want it, or depending, it will give you various different other bits of information. You know, such as your media that's playing, or whatever it's in there. So yeah, it's all good. Nice, like leather wrapped 3-spoke steering wheel, as I say, heated on this Overland. Window switches are down here. These are your electric window switches mounted here, because as I say, remember, you can take the doors off, so there's nothing really to worry about in terms of, you know, electronics in the door packs. So that's quite an interesting thing, but you do have to remember they're there. Talking of the doors, people that are used to the old Land Rover Defender will feel that this is the height of luxury, because you've actually got space for your right arm as a driver, plus an armrest. So, you know, you can say it's a really nice, comfortable driving position. This is interesting. The modern car, you get a cigarette lighter in. There's also an ashtray, which I had to take out because I couldn't get my water bottle into the cup holder if I left it in there. But yeah, proper Marlboro man that. You got a cigarette lighter in a modern day car. Who knew? 8-speed auto transmission, as I say, which I'll talk about when we're driving. And then of course you've got your 4-wheel drive selector here. So you're a normal 2-wheel drive. You've also got 4-wheel drive high, 4-wheel drive part-time, neutral, and then all the way back gives you does all the locking differentials, and puts you into low range. So it's a proper off-roader. It's a proper mud plugger, the Wrangler still. It also has hill descent control, and as I say, I've driven the car off-road and it is hugely capable. You know, pretty much anything you can throw at it. So it is a good old bus if you are going off the beaten track. There's plenty of storage, little slot in there for your mobile phone, centre armrest, you know, kind of decent glove box, as I say. You know, wife's sunglasses and things are in there. Not she'll need them the day. But yeah, there we go. Now these 2 roof panels here, these are the ones that lift off. Now I won't do it today, but basically you can whip this down here, turn that one there, and then it lifts out, and then there's a bag that goes in the boot you can store them in. So okay, it's a bit ponderous, but do you know what? What other 4-door off-roader gives you the ability to do that? I think it's quite fun, actually. In fact, if it wasn't raining today, I probably would be. Have the roof off. It's quite a bit of fun, as I say. But yeah, you know, it's comfortable enough. As I say, there's 3 of us, plus the dog, has done so far. What have we done? Hang on a second. Wait to see what we've done total mileage since we left home. We have done 497 miles so far, and I've averaged 24.4 miles to the gallon. Now, the official combined consumption for the Wrangler, they're saying, is about 25.5. So that's not bad, and considering, as I say, it's pretty much motorway all the way from my house to my mum's house. So I've done, you know, pretty much what they say it's on a tin. Not the most economical of cars, you know, but there are a lot worse out there. And certainly, as I say, in terms it comes to style, what else could you want? Now, out on the road, the one thing I must admit that surprised me about this car is how modern it feels. Now, when Jeep upgraded into this particular variant of Wrangler a couple of years back, it concentrated a huge amount on making it a much more capable car on road. There was no doubting its off-road capabilities at all, and as I say, having driven one off the road, I can vouch for that. It's a superb car off the road, but it's on road. It's here where, let's be honest, 99.9% of the time it's going to spend its life. That's what they wanted to concentrate on. Now, don't get me wrong, there's no way I'm going to sit here and tell you that this is as capable as a Porsche Macan or a Mercedes-Benz GLC or any other that plethora of SUVs that just seem so beloved of us, the buying public these days. But it doesn't disgrace itself either. As I say, it's 350 miles from my house to Lockerbie, where we've been staying with my mum, and it's 6-hour drive. I tell you what, I got out feeling pretty fresh. Okay, there's a bit of wind noise. That's the kind of predominant noise that you get through the car. I would think if we'd had the 2-door and in Rubicon trim, it would have been not as nice as this car. The longer wheelbase is the one I would particularly recommend you to buy if you were looking at the Wrangler, because as I say, it's just that bit nicer in terms of its ride comfort and practicality, dare I suggest. And also with the Overland, you don't get the kind of chunkier off-road tyres, so there's not as much tyre roll as you maybe get in something like the Rubicon either. Now I want to talk a little bit about the engine in the car, because it was the one thing that was, I wouldn't say concerning me, but it's the one thing I was kind of keen to sort of like try in terms of, how it copes with the car. Now it's a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine. You don't get the turbo diesel, the big 2.8 turbo diesel you used to get in the Wrangler. And see, diesel's kind of fallen out of favour. Certainly, sort of like here in the UK, it's very much sort of like out of favour. And I say that as the owner of a diesel Jeep. My Grand Cherokee is a big 3-litre V6 CRD, but that's what you could buy at the time. Anyway, I'm diversifying. The power output of this 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo is just shy of 270 horsepower. It's about 269 brake horsepower, and it's 270 pounds per foot of torque that it produces as well. Now it's quite vocal, the engine, not uncomfortably so. You do hear it, and it's not obviously as nice sounding as you'd maybe get in say an inline 6, but then it's not as clattery as you would get in say something like a diesel. So it's somewhere in between the two stools. At cruising speed, it's quiet. On the motorway, 70 miles an hour, it's the wind noise you notice, not engine noise at all, or tyre noise. So that's the sort of like the predominant noise, as I say, is from the wind. And that's basically because the car's shaped like a cardboard box. There's no getting away from that. But it's a capable engine. That's what surprised me. It is quite capable. It delivers its power through this 8-speed automatic transmission, which is very slick in its changes. It's a bit lazy on the downshift, so if you want to get a bit of hustle on, it kind of thinks about it, then it kicks down. So it's not as sharp maybe as some other gearboxes, but then, as I say, it's not really tuned for performance driving at all. So it's capable, is what I'm trying to say, and more than capable. The steering's a bit vague. There's no getting away from that. The steering's vaguer than a politician at question time. But the ride quality's not bad. That's the other thing that kind of surprises me. It's only the really harshest of bumps that send any kind of shudder through the car. And sort of like on smoother flat top, if you're kind of driving along and there's sort of bumps in the road, the spring and damper ratings, I think have been tuned very, very well. Certainly when you think of the off-road capability of the car, where they're still capable of delivering a relatively decent ride comfort on the road. So that has to be commended. The brakes need a bit of a firm push though. I mean, it's a big heavy vehicle this, it's 2.5 tons, so you do need sort of like a bit of stopping power, and you need to use your foot quite a bit on it, and you need to really sort of like haul the car up quite well by giving a good prodigious use of that middle pedal. Driving position's nice. As I say, you sit very upright in the car, not uncomfortably so, but it's good because you get good visibility around it. And because of that design, you can see all the extremities of the vehicle, which is really good. As I say, Land Rover Defender, old Defender owners will rejoice if they drove this, because there's somewhere for your right elbow to go. There's plenty of space at the side here. I've got somewhere to rest my elbow on as we're driving along, which is, well, really nice. And again, same here, so you get a really nice driving position in the car, and the seat's very comfortable. I was quite surprised, as I say, how sort of like how capable it has been doing this long distance in this car. Now, in terms of how it behaves on the road, well, as I say, it's not going to behave like a modern day SUV. It is still a body on frame chassis in construction. So we haven't gone into, Jeep hasn't gone down the route of a monocoque, with this. It's a body on frame chassis, construction, and you can tell. You can tell out here out on the road. So as I say, oh, there's a really big truck coming down this really narrow road. Thank you very much. Thank you. See, off-road capability. Could get it onto the verge, no problem at all. Well done, Jeep. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, body on frame construction. So there are obviously going to be compromises to be made with that. But I'm genuinely surprised how nice this car is to drive. I'm genuinely surprised. It's part of the reason why I wanted to bring it. I think I had a preconceived idea of what it might be like, and I think that is part of the Jeep's problem. Jeep's marketing and all the rest of it shows it very much as a kind of recreational vehicle, and you think to yourself, oh yeah, it's a bit old-fashioned looking, so therefore it's going to be old-fashioned to drive. It really isn't. It really isn't. As I say, it's not as capable as maybe an up-to-date modern SUV, but don't think about this as being sort of like some kind of anachronism from decades gone by. There's a nice car in here. There's a really nice car to drive around, in this car, and I'm really surprised how well it's coping with what I'm asking it to do. And bear in mind, as I say, it can drive off-road here and climb that mountain and go through that field and ford that stream and all the rest of it. I've got no doubt about that. But it's how it performs on the road that I was interested in. And I have to say, it performs really, really well. And I think it's a real shame that we've forgotten about the Wrangler. Because, as I say, let's be honest, without it, we probably wouldn't have Land Rover. And things, let's be fair, it helped many a man and woman fight for our freedom back in the 1940s. And I think we need to show it a little bit more appreciation, because this is a good car. Now, if you are considering a Wrangler, would you be considering other cars? Well, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's as capable as a BMW X5 or a Porsche Cayenne on the road. It certainly isn't. Nor probably even the new Land Rover Defender, in fairness. But if you're coming from an old Defender, you're going to find this a real step up. Maybe the new Defender's maybe not quite your cup of tea. You want to have that more kind of iconic shape. So as I say, coming from an old Defender, this isn't too bad. Ineos Grenadier, perhaps, yeah. Perhaps that could now be seen as a sort of like a contender in this sort of marketplace. But it's more likely to be, I would suggest, maybe more of those kind of lifestyle pickups that you might be considering as well. Like Ford Ranger with a double cab, Hilux from Toyota with a double cab, cars like that, the Volkswagen Amarok. That's where I might see sort of like competition for the Wrangler coming from. But as I say, it is more of a style statement. And as much as in terms of its price, because it's not a cheap car, I wouldn't suggest it being a second car, just being flippant about that. But maybe if you had access to other cars, then a used Wrangler might be quite an idea. And like I say, it's not a cheap car, so there are 3 trim levels available. You start with the Sahara, you move up to this Overland, and then you go up to the Rubicon. But you're still going to need to find in excess of £60,000 to buy yourself a Jeep Wrangler these days. This particular one I've got with the optional Earl Grey paint on it is just under £63,000. So I'm not going to kid you on that it's a cheap car. When I wanted to start this new channel, House of Cars, and I wanted to sort of like tell the story of cars, I was conscious that I'm not sure if it wanted to be a review channel, whether I wanted it to tell the history of vehicles. And I sort of wanted it to be a little bit of a hybrid, a bit of both, because there are cars that are on sale today that deserve our attention maybe more so than we give them. And I think this is one of them, and hence the reason why I decided to cover the Wrangler as our first episode. And I think it's not as successful as it should be, basically because we forgot all about it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that if you're considering a BMW X5 or a Porsche Cayenne or even a Land Rover Defender, that this should also be on your list to look at as your everyday family car, because there's no way that I can sit here and say, well, it's as refined to drive and it's as good to drive on the road as some of those other cars. But what I don't want you to do is forget about it, because there's a really good car here, and what Jeep have done is something that not many manufacturers are capable of doing. And certainly when we think of the manufacturers that I spoke about with those cars at the beginning of the episode, the 911, the Defender, the new Mini, obviously Aston Martin with its DB range, whilst the names are synonymous with the cars that went before them, perhaps what they've done is they've engineered all of the little flaws and the foibles out of them. And by foibles and flaws, you could also say character. and charm. And that's what this car has by the bucket load. In fact, I'm not sure that there's a car on sale today that has as much sort of like weight, sort of that it's as capable of tracing its history and its roots back to that original 1940s Willys Jeep as the Wrangler is today. It's not as successful because we've forgotten about it, and that's a crime, because remember, like I said, if it wasn't for this car, we wouldn't have a Land Rover. Thank you for watching House of Cars. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I hope you've enjoyed me bringing you to Scotland. Now, if you're interested in electric cars and you want to see the reviews of all the latest electric cars, then head over to my other channel, Auto EV. That's where we'll cover all of those. But House of Cars is going to tell the story more of sort of like every other sort of car that's available to buy on sale today with internal combustion engines. We won't do electric cars here. It'll be purely just sort of like, as I say, iconic cars such as the Wrangler. We might do a few reviews. Let's see how it goes. Don't forget, like and subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you the next time that the house is in session. Thank you for watching.